Cheat you with fly fish food, and we're going to talk about dry flies today. Specifically, what should you put in a dry fly? What should you leave off? So hopefully by the end of this video, you'll be able to tie the perfect dry fly.
That's a big brown.
All right, let's talk about it. So, dry fly, obviously something that floats on top of the water. And the problem is, hooks are made of metal. So somehow, we need to attach things to this piece of metal and get it to float. There are all different types of dry flies. Sometimes you need a really sparse dry fly where there's not a lot of current. Other times, there's giant current, or you need to make a long cast and throw a big mend, so you need something that's extra buoyant. Other times you may be fishing a drop or a heavy tungsten nymph underneath your dry fly. So there are all types of ways to get your dry fly to float. We're going to talk about some of the things that you need to know to make sure that your dry flies are going to float and float properly and be able to catch fish at the same time. We'll start with the most obvious thing, the hook. A lot of times in the shop I'll have customers come in and they'll read what's on the hook. And they think that that hook can only be used for what it says. So it might say caddis pupa hook or, a dry fly hook, something like that. At the end of the day, for a dry fly, you just need a thin wire hook. And typically, if the hook says dry fly on it, it's going to be a little bit thinner wire. That's kind of the idea there. But it doesn't mean that you can't tie dry flies on heavier wired hooks when you have a lot of floating materials on the fly, like foam or a lot of yarn or something like that. If you don't use a hook that has a little bit of weight to it, your fly won't sit properly on the water. For example, one of the most popular dry flies for fishing dry dropper rig is a chubby Chernobyl, and I typically tie that on a streamer hook, and it works great. So just keep in mind, the more buoyant your fly is and the taller it is off of your, the hook, so to speak, it might land on its side. So heavier hook solves that problem. Then again, you might use a light wire hook and still have trouble floating your fly. And to me, that's an issue with the material and the construction of the fly. As you get more comfortable with hooks, this will become a simpler task for you. But you can always ask somebody, whether it be online, at a fly shop, any of us, we can answer questions. So if you have any questions about what type of fly you're tying and need a suggestion on a hook, someone with more experience can definitely help you point in the right direction. We'll just start with the tail of a dry fly. The tail of the dry fly is a pretty simple thing. Sometimes it's a mayfly with split tails. Sometimes it's a little shuck that's designed to sit down in the water. Or it could even be on a curved shank hook where it's designed to really protrude in the water and not float at all. So it depends on what type of fly that you're trying to tie. The most standard dry fly hackle or dry fly tail is just hackle fibers or micro fivettes. Those types of things will help you create either your standard mayfly tail or the split tail. So keep in mind, you can do it that way, or a shuck is typically tied out of yarn, something like this. And I would just recommend finding the hatch that you're trying to match and create your own stuff. It's great fun as well. If that's not your jam, I totally get it. There are tons of fly patterns out there that you can play with. That said, you might have a PMD pattern that's your favorite, and you want to transition that into a Batis. You'll have a good idea of how to construct the flies as well if you got a good understanding of how to get a dry fly to float. All right, for the body, we're moving up the fly. The body of a dry fly can be a lot of different things. If I'm going very, very sparse, really techie fishing, I'm just going to leave it a thread body. Just leave it bare thread, and that's going to be the most sparse way to let that sit in the surface. If you want a little bit of feature on that, you can wrap a little bit of colored thread through it, a little bit of, something else. It could even be a little thin wire, but just not too much because it might sink. Okay, so you see where I'm going there. The next thing that you can put on is dubbing. So dubbing on dry flies is kind of a funny subject because there's definitely dry fly dubbing and then kind of everything else. Okay, so dry fly dubbing is a dubbing that's kind of designed to help your fly float a little bit better. Typically tied out of synthetic fibers. It's typically very, very fine dubbing that you can dub super, super small, but there are other dry fly dubs that have a little bugginess to them. So just depends on what you're tying. At the end of the day, whether you use dubbing that's going to assist your fly to float better, or dubbing that just is kind of neutral that might even help your fly sink a little bit better, you just need to have more buoyant materials on your fly than sinking materials. It's quite simple, but you could tie a big chubby Chernobyl and put hare's ear dubbing as the belly. There's enough floaty stuff on that fly to get it to sit properly. And the hare's ear dubbing might even help anchor it in the water. So there you go. There's a little hack for you. So the type of dubbing really could be anything. You just need to make sure that it's not going to absorb too much water for your buoyant materials to do their job, which is to float the fly. So the body could be made out of dubbing. It also could be made out of biots. So biots are a very popular way to do dry fly bodies for mayfly style traditional dry flies. Turkey biots are my favorite if you're tying the biots with the rib sticking out, which is awesome. So biots are good. Foam on flies, okay? Typically foam is good for bigger, bulkier flies, typically dry dropper flies, like a chubby Chernobyl, which I've mentioned. That's kind of like the standard for foam. Here you can see I have some that I've laminated. So they're all different things that you can do with foam. You can wrap it on smaller bodies. Typically foam is a very buoyant material that requires a little bit heavier hook, but play with it. When I say play with it, get a cup of water and put it in there. Throw it in there like your bad cast when you're trying to hit a fish that's 20 feet away and you just smack it right on the head. Is that fly going to break the surface too fast? Is the fly going to settle? Is the fly going to go under the surface and then pop back up? The more you understand about your fly right off the bench, A, you can make more changes to that fly and get it to do exactly what you want, and B, you'll have a better expectation of how to use it on the river. Now we're getting to the good stuff, the real buoyant stuff. So you could either do like a parachute or a wing on a chubby out of some sort of yarn. There are all types of synthetic fibers that you can use to help your dry fly float. Anything from a parachute post to an overwing, spinner wings. There are all types of yarns that are buoyant. Typically the polypropylene types of yarns, Zelon, they're designed to float. Other types of yarn really won't help your fly float. So again, you need to make sure that it's buoyant. And the way to test that, just throw it in a little tank of water and see if it floats. All right, so here we have the posts, we have the wings, the big dog of them all, Hackle. Okay, so dry fly hackle is very, very fun to use. It's fun to collect, and it makes a fly look amazing. Super, super durable. And throughout the history of fly fishing, rooster feathers have been used to create dry flies. Okay, that said, not all feathers are the same. Not all rooster feathers are the same. This is genetic quality dry fly hackle that comes from special places that just raise feather birds. I hear it all the time, not all the time. I think people are wise to it. They're like, I'm just going to raise a few chickens in my backyard and I'll have all this awesome dry fly hackle. And then 6 months later when they say, hey, my rooster attacked me so I killed it, how many dry flies could I tie out of that? And I say 0, because that rooster was a jerk anyway and he's not genetic. So anyway, the dry fly hackle is pretty killer. You can get it in all different sizes and colors. This that I have on the table is a saddle, so it's from the back of the rooster. The other part is called the neck, which looks a little bit different. But dry fly hackle is key, and you got to have quality dry fly hackle. It's super useful. You can put it on foam flies, parachute flies, traditional hackle flies, hackle stackers. But good dry fly hackle is fun to use. Next, we're going to go to CDC. CDC stands for Col de Canard. In French, that means duck arse. See how I threw the R in there so I didn't swear? Brig, you can beep it out if you want still. It'll make me sound tough. But anyway, This stuff is awesome. It comes from the oil gland of a duck. It's designed to help the duck shed water, and they live in the wintertime in Rexburg, Idaho sometimes. And so it works really well. CDC, if you do some searches online, you'll see a bunch of different ways to use it, but it's a great way to keep your fly floating. Snowshoe rabbit foot, another way to keep a fly floating. Very buoyant material to use. You can use it as a parachute. You can do comparadons. Look up a fly called the Usual. It's like the standard for all snowshoe hair flies, but it's a cool buoyant material. The fibers underneath the foot help the rabbit stay warm in the winter. So there you have it. And then good old deer hair, elk hair, whatever type of hair you have, chances are it's going to help something float. Okay, they're all different flavors and varieties, from comparadon hair, spinning deer hair, deer belly hair, all that stuff. And it all can be used in different ways, shapes, or forms on dry flies. The reason why the hair floats so well from those animals is it's actually hollow. So the little shafts of hair have air inside of it, and it's buoyant. All right, so you have your dry flies tied. Yes, you should use floatant. Okay, you always need floatant. I mean, sometimes some flies will float a little better than others, but I highly recommend floatant. When you're using CDC, you're going to want some sort of floatant that's friendly with CDC. Powder, obviously, is a CDC-friendly floatant, but Loon Loxa and even Flyagra work really well with CDC as well. But at the end of the day, just choose a floatant that works for the types of flies you like to fish. If you have questions about that, again, you can ask someone more experienced than you are, or ask us. We'll for sure set you down the right path. But at the end of the day, the way that you build your dry fly in the simplest form is use more stuff that floats than stuff that sinks. I know that's kind of a real basic example of it, but based on what we have just explained, it should make a little bit more sense. Anyway, my name's Cheech. I'm here to help you tie better dry flies. The end.